I need to start this episode by telling you that everything I thought I understood about this case is different now. Not wrong, exactly. The facts haven't changed. The foundation still exists. The lawyer still vanished. Sylvia Orant is still dead. The silence agreement is still real. But the shape of it, the architecture of what happened, I had it backwards. I think I had it backwards from the very beginning. This is the Voss Inheritance. My name is Cassandra Maddox, and over the next several episodes, I'll be walking you through one of the most quietly unsettling mysteries I've ever come across. A dead woman, a fortune with nowhere to go, and a circle of people who all seem to have made the same decision: to disappear. For 3 episodes, I have been telling you the story of a woman who was manipulated, a widow in a penthouse, isolated from her children, steered toward a phantom foundation by people with interests she may not have fully understood, a victim of something larger than herself. That is not who Eleanor Voss was. I found the silence agreement 4 days ago. It was exactly where it should have been, in a public archive, filed correctly, labeled accurately, sitting in a box that hadn't been opened in 19 years, because nobody thought to look for it there. Nobody thought to look for it there, because nobody was supposed to know it existed. Eleanor Voss signed it. She didn't just sign it, she drafted it. After Sylvia's death, I went back to the beginning, not the beginning of my investigation, the beginning of the paper trail, 1987, the year the Aldrich endowment was registered. The year, I now believe, Eleanor Voss decided what she was going to do with her money and spent the next 16 years making sure it happened exactly the way she intended. The city's municipal archive holds records going back over a century. Most of it is digitized now, but the older material, anything before 1995, exists only in physical form. I was looking for anything connected to the Garner Street district in 1987. Zoning filings, development agreements, property records, anything that might tell me more about the moment the Aldrich endowment came into existence. What I found instead was a miscategorized file, labeled as a routine noise ordinance appeal, filed under the wrong district code, sitting in a box with 40 other documents nobody had any reason to read. Inside was a 12-page agreement, dated November 3rd, 1987. Typed on letterhead I didn't recognize at first, until I looked more carefully and realized the letterhead wasn't a law firm's, it wasn't a corporation's. It was Eleanor Voss's personal stationery. Eleanor Voss, in November of 1987, entered into a formal agreement with 4 other parties. The agreement established the structure of her estate's eventual transfer to the Aldrich endowment. It outlined the roles of Victor Aldrich Crane, confirmed in the document as a legal identity created specifically for this purpose, not a real person, and Garner Street Partners as the financial bridge between her estate and the foundation. It stipulated that her 3 children would receive nothing, not because she didn't love them. The agreement addresses this directly, in language I have read probably 30 times now. It states that the exclusion of her children was a protective measure, that their ignorance of the agreement's contents was itself a form of protection. That knowing would put them in danger. In danger from whom? The agreement does not specify. It refers only to, and I'm going to read this part carefully, the parties whose interests this agreement exists to permanently conceal. There are people this agreement is hiding. Eleanor knew who they were. She built an entire architecture of misdirection, a phantom foundation, a fake identity, a holding company, a lawyer sworn to silence. Not to steal from her children, but to keep something buried. Something that, if it surfaced, would be dangerous to anyone near it. The agreement required the silence of all signatories as a condition of its execution. It named 5 parties: Eleanor Voss, Victor Aldrich Crane, the legal fiction, Preston Hale, Sylvia Orant, and Marcus Voss, Eleanor's youngest child, the one described in every account of this family as the closest to his mother, the one who, after the lawsuit was dropped, relocated twice and made himself nearly impossible to find. I told you in episode 3 that I found a familiar name in Sylvia Orant's personal records, a name I had encountered earlier in the case and dismissed as coincidence. That name was Marcus Voss. He is named as Sylvia's healthcare proxy, a legal document filed with her physician in 2004, designating Marcus Voss as the person authorized to make medical decisions on her behalf if she became unable to do so herself. Not a professional designation, not a legal formality born of paperwork, personal, the kind of document you sign when you trust someone completely, when you are willing to put your life in their hands. And Marcus Voss, at 26 years old, signed the silence agreement his mother drafted. He knew about the foundation. He knew about Victor Aldrich Crane. He knew about the concealed parties whose interests Eleanor was protecting. He spent 4 years sitting in a courtroom watching his siblings fight for an inheritance he already knew they would never receive, because he had signed a document 16 years earlier, promising his silence in exchange for something Eleanor had given him that the others hadn't. I don't yet know what that was. What I know is this: Daniel and Caroline Voss dropped their lawsuit without explanation on the same morning in March of 2008. They had been fighting for 4 years. Something changed that morning. Someone told them something, or showed them something that made 4 years of legal effort simply stop. I think that someone was Marcus. I think Eleanor planned for that too. Here is what I now believe happened. Eleanor Voss spent the last 16 years of her life executing a plan she had designed in 1987. A plan to transfer her entire estate to a structure that would permanently conceal something connected to her late husband Gerald, to the Garner Street district, to people whose names she was willing to go to extraordinary lengths to protect. She created a fake identity to front the foundation. She hired a lawyer she trusted absolutely. She brought in Sylvia Orant, a professional with the expertise to manage the physical infrastructure of the plan, to write the reports that would eventually erase the building, to keep the geographic footprint clean. And she kept Marcus close, the youngest, the one most like her, perhaps. She told him what she knew, swore him to silence, and trusted him to manage his siblings when the time came. The Thursday night visitor Miriam Cho described, the one who came every week for years through a door that wasn't the front door. I believe that was Marcus, keeping his mother company, keeping the plan intact, making sure, week by week, that everything was still holding. Eleanor Voss did not die a passive woman. She died having executed to the letter a 16-year plan. The penthouse, the armchair, the hands folded in her lap. Even that, I think, was deliberate. Even how she was found. But here is the question that is keeping me awake. The agreement exists to conceal certain parties. Eleanor built everything around protecting those people. She sacrificed her children's inheritance. She swore 4 people to silence. She spent 16 years maintaining the architecture of a secret. What is the secret? Who are the parties whose interests are so dangerous that Eleanor Voss spent the last 16 years of her life making sure they stayed hidden? I need to tell you about the 5th signature line. The agreement has 5 parties. I told you their names: Eleanor, Victor Aldrich Crane, Preston Hale, Sylvia Orant, Marcus Voss. 5 signatures on the document, 5 names signed in ink, dated November 3rd, 1987. The 6th line is blank. There is a name typed beneath it, the standard format for a legal document, the printed name below the signature line. But the line above it is empty, unsigned. The typed name beneath that blank line is one I have not encountered anywhere else in this investigation. A name that does not appear in any of the property records, the business filings, the archive documents, or the public record connected to this case in any way I have been able to find. The name typed on the 6th signature line is Eleanor's, not as a signatory. She signed at the top as the agreement's author. This is a second entry, a different role, a role the document describes in the line above the name as the beneficiary of last resort. Eleanor Voss signed this agreement as its author. She left a second signature line for herself in a different capacity, and she never signed it. I don't know what a beneficiary of last resort means in the context of this document. I don't know why Eleanor left her own signature line blank. I don't know if it was an oversight, a deliberate omission, or something that was meant to be signed later and never was. What I know is that there is a role in this agreement that Eleanor assigned to herself and then declined to fill. And I know that Sylvia Orant is dead, and Preston Hale is gone, and Marcus Voss is somewhere I cannot find him. And I know that whatever this agreement was built to conceal is still out there, still protected, still worth protecting by someone. I want to tell you about something I found at the very bottom of the archive box, beneath the silence agreement, beneath the misfiled noise ordinance. A single photograph, paperclipped to nothing, labeled in pencil on the back with a date and a location. The date is October 19th, 2003, 5 days after Eleanor Voss was found dead in her penthouse armchair. The location written on the back is a small coastal town approximately 3 hours from this city. The photograph shows a woman from behind. She is walking away from the camera along a narrow street. She is wearing a dark coat. Her posture is upright. Her hair is gray and cut short. I cannot tell you with certainty that the woman in that photograph is Eleanor Voss. What I can tell you is that the handwriting on the back of that photograph, the penciled date, the penciled location, matches the handwriting on the silence agreement. The agreement Eleanor drafted. The agreement Eleanor signed. Someone who knew Eleanor Voss's handwriting labeled that photograph, and the photograph was filed with Eleanor Voss's documents. The medical examiner ruled her death cardiac arrest, natural causes, a woman found peacefully in her chair, no autopsy ordered, no next of kin present at the identification. It was Preston Hale who confirmed the body. Preston Hale, who vanished 2 weeks later. I have been assuming Eleanor Voss is dead. I am no longer certain that is true. This is the Voss inheritance. If you're still here, you're one of the curious ones. Stick around. The next mystery is already waiting.